Okay, good morning. Thank you again for hosting us in Lake County. We had a tour this morning in a very large bus on a very narrow road with a lot of curves. So my palms are still slightly sweaty, but that's a great way to get funding. So let's just take them out on the windiest, the most narrow road in a big bus and see if we can get some funds. So it may have worked. Yesterday we had a great meeting, had a discussion with our ACT, and so let's go ahead and we will open up a discussion with the Central Oregon Regional Solutions team. So we'll go ahead and get started. Gary, I'll turn it over to you.
Gary Farnsworth, Region 4 Manager. And again, like I did yesterday with the Area Commission discussion, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to the group that we've got lined up. Annette Liba, perhaps let Annette go ahead and start the introduction. So if you guys want to come on up, and then of course I'll be available for questions as well, or Jared Johnson also.
Welcome.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Annette Liba. I'm the South Central Regional Solutions Coordinator. We have divided our presentation up kind of in two sections. Given that this is maybe the first time, if not the first time in a long time that the Transportation Commission has been in Lake County, I thought it was important to allow some of our local leaders who serve on our advisory committee an opportunity to talk about our work as well. So we're going to have some comments from them on some of the work we've been doing, and then the team will wrap up with a project to highlight kind of our collaborative working relationship. So with that, I'm going to lead off and just remind you a little bit about the vision for Regional Solutions. So the vision is that through Regional Solutions, we align state resources, whether those are staff resources, funding programs, information that exists within the different state agencies, that we align those kind of resources with other public-private philanthropic resources to complete local economic development projects that address local priorities. So the way we implement that vision is that the governor has appointed advisory committees for each of our 11 regions. The 11 regions are aligned with the 11 federally recognized economic development districts. And the makeup of the advisory committee that the governor has appointed really reflects the vision. So the governor has appointed a convener, and for South Central, that is Jane O'Keefe, who is to my immediate right. We have a private sector representative who is Tricia Hill, who represents agriculture and is not here today. She's in Klamath County. We also have a philanthropic representative for this group. That's Chip Massey from the Klamath Community College, who is also a fellow with the Oregon Community Foundation. And we have the mayor, a city representative, that's the mayor of Klamath Falls, Carol Westfall, and a county representative who for this region is County Commissioner Jim Walls. County Commissioner Brad Winters. That was a kind of a brain fart.
I thought I got promoted.
So that's kind of the vision. And then, so again, I want to introduce the rest of the panel that we have here. Again, to my immediate right is Jane O'Keefe, our convener. Larry Holzgang, who is also a team member, is our Business Oregon representative. Jim Walls with Lake County Resources Initiative, and County Commissioner Brad Winters. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jane.
Good morning. I'm really excited to hear that you guys got to take the trip that I take to go home and back not every day, but occasionally. And it's even more fun in the winter, just so you know.
We've been invited back, but we declined.
So I'd like to talk to you about our priorities. And first is the basics, the infrastructure. In Lakeview, natural gas is something that we have decided is very important, and rural broadband. One of the things that is important, a lot of us like to work from home, and we're not, like for in Adel, it's not dial-up, but it's darn close. and broadband is really important. Rail, you're going to hear more about the railroad, but rail is important. Water and wastewater systems are important in just about every rural community here. Shovel-ready industrial land, and entrepreneurship and small businesses. Just about every business here is a small business. Downtown revitalization, I think you can see that as you go through the towns in Lake County. Workforce housing, that's something that is important as you recruit businesses to town and just for the people that live here too. And workforce training, especially in the trades. One of the things that I have trouble staying off of boards and commissions, and I'm on the hospital board. We have had trouble opening. We now have opened our assisted living facility, but we had trouble opening it because we could not find CNAs to work there. I know that our local mill, have trouble getting people to work in the mill that could pass the drug test. We have had trouble getting people to work in the construction part to build things here. It's just darn hard to get people in the trades. Improve forest health and support the restoration economy. You'll hear that be expanded a little bit. Reducing economic development impediments associated with air and water quality issues. And then I'd like to highlight a project. Our committee recommended $1.5 million in funding to reduce barriers to economic development by removing outdated wood stoves. And these funds were leveraged with over $100,000 in incentives and vendor discounts. And in Lakeview and Klamath Falls, we were able to get rid of 247 wood stoves, and we removed and replaced those stoves with higher efficiency devices. A lot of people around here still heat their houses with wood stoves, and a lot of them were very, very old. We were able to replace those with natural gas furnaces, heat pumps, and sometimes high efficiency wood stoves combined with electric wall heaters. And the state agency teams assisted in establishing a wood stove replacement and energy efficiency weatherization program through the South Central Oregon Economic Development District, that we call that SCOED, and Klamath Lake County Assistance Service. And we also, it's a huge partnership with Oregon Health Authority, Lake County, Klamath County, City of Klamath Falls, Town of Lakeview, Lake County Resource Initiative, and private businesses. And that has greatly reduced the days that the smoke was so bad in our air quality. And I am now going to turn it over to Larry Holzgang, and he can talk about how those emission reductions benefit our economic development.
Thought I'd do it with a bit of a story, because about 12, 13 years ago, I was working on a recruitment. It was a wood products company. As I recall, it was international paper. They came to Klamath Falls, which is always your very biggest goal, is to just get them to come to town first. And they showed up with 5 people. 2 of them were environmental engineers. And we sat in the courthouse in Klamath and talked for a couple hours about non-attainment, particulate matter, permitting, and offsets. They left, thanked us kindly for all of our time, and we never heard from them again. They ended up locating up in Centralia. So how does that relate to what we're doing now with the wood stove abatement program? Well, the first thing is we now have some offsets because of the wood stoves that we've abated. We have cleaner air, and we're not in non-attainment. So if we had that same recruitment today, we'd have a far better chance of getting them to stay. That's how that all ties into economic development. It also helped with a project that we do have today that we'll talk about a little bit later with Red Rock, because Red Rock also needed an air quality permit. And if you're in attainment, it's a whole bunch easier to get. So we can talk about that a little bit later. And I'm going to hand it off to Jim. He's going to talk a little bit about a project here, the Innovation and Learning Center.
Yeah. The Innovation Learning, okay. See, I don't know technology, but I'm going to talk about it. But anyway. That's right, yeah. The Innovation Learning Center, the school district and LCRI and the commissioners and the community came together a few years ago to create it. And it's using an old school building, the Daly Middle School, and it's to offer college classes here locally. So we have synchronized classrooms at the ILC, at the hospital where we can teach nursing, in the city of Paisley, in Christmas Valley. And we can now offer a 4-year degree from Oregon State in agriculture in Lakeview. And the latest numbers I heard is that next year we will have 10 high school graduates from the ILC will have their associate's degree. Look at the reduction in costs, because we're very concerned that the cost of education to the kids today and the amount they have to pay back, if we could do that, and we're doing it, that is what the ILC is all about. And we just had a nurse move here, buy a home, finishing her education because she can take her classes right there at the hospital. And so that just all that falls into place with the Innovation Learning Center. And we're talking to the school district and Klamath Community College about offering a trades program, because not every kid's going to go to college. And so can we teach plumbing, carpentry, electrician, etc., and give every kid the opportunity to succeed. So it's I mean, for a rural area, to have that capability is amazing. I had a company that I was talking to yesterday looking at a couple of facilities around Eastern Oregon in Klamath Lake and others. And he says, well, we kind of ruled out Lake because of the railroad, and you don't have any of the high-tech technology that we need. And I said, whoa, the railroad has just got a lot of money. They're going to be working on the bridges, and they're going to be upgrading that. And I said, we've got these synchronized deals. So they're rethinking that thing, and they said, well, hopefully they said, we'll get back to you. So, but it's that misconception of what we don't have, that we need to get out what we do have. Another thing I just want to mention a little bit about too is that LCRI, Lake County Resource Initiative, started because of the forest crisis and losing all but one sawmill. And we came here through Sustainable Northwest to create LCRI to facilitate, with Jane O'Keefe being the first chair of LCRI, to facilitate the collaborative and see if we couldn't get things going. We will this year and one of the first things we did was the collaborative said, we want to have a monitoring program. So we have local kids that now started in high school in our monitoring program now have their PhDs, and very cool. And one of the things we're tackling was 24 years ago, there was a rule in Region 6 of the Forest Service says you couldn't harvest a tree over 21 inches. Well, our monitoring is showing that when we're thinning from below and not getting fire reintroduced often enough, that we have no reproduction out here under these stands that have been treated for fuel treatment. In the future, there'll be no trees. And then we won't have our last sawmill would be my worry. And so how do we change that, and how do we manage difference? So we're proposing that research, and the State of Oregon Department of Forestry is funding it through the federal program that was initiated by the legislature, that the State Department of Forestry can get involved, and that's being funded to look at that rule and do the research that's needed. That we already know what the results are, but can we change that results by going to more proportional thin, not taking a large number of 21-inch trees, but that will also, if you take, some stands will have none taken because they were not sufficient number. Some may have one, some may have 4 per acre or something like that. And that profitability to the mill will help assure the mill here. But more importantly, it'll help to ensure that the reproduction is there. Because what we're finding is our research, our monitoring is showing that in some cases, we have too large of trees taking up the water and nutrients. You've got to make room for the new trees. We've got trees out here that are 18 inches high that are 30 years old. That does not sustain a forest. So we got to go back to the science. And not to eliminate the 21-inch rule or get into that kind of controversy, but let's do it stand by stand in science with science to do it. And so that's what we're going to do in the forestry. And you went on your way to Adele to some of our latest big projects on the National Forest and the Warners, and through the Joint Chief Program on private and public lands. We're doing both. So, thank you.
So welcome once again, Commission. It's an honor to be here. I get the pleasure of being on the Regional Solutions Advisory Team. In 2015-17, whenever projects were prioritized, rail was one of the things that I pushed forward, our bridges. Different operator at the time, but was going through weekly inspections at a huge cost because of the condition of these bridges. We applied for Connect Oregon dollars based around Red Rock with Erspur as a match. Red Rock wasn't an absolute at the time. Everybody loved it. We could not get there to the funding because, rightfully so, the project broke ground, wasn't on the ground. So with the team of people I work with on the Regional Solutions, we brought the staff here at Lake County, put in the grant proposal, put in for a $165,000 grant, which would leverage about another $85,000 from the county/operator to be able to do some bridge repair. It's not a fix-all, but it will take some of the main bridges and bring them up to standard, so the cost goes way down, the safety goes way up. So as we're proposing this, working on this, and as many of you know, I have quite a passion for that side of the world. When Red Rock comes, these bridges need to be able to take 286. So this grant is basically to just get these bridges up to today's standards. So long and short of it is it gets down to time to vote on it, and this is where I'm quite humbled and quite honored for this to be approved by the advisory group, the Regional Solutions. The motion to have this go forward was made by Commissioner DeGrew out of Klamath County. The partnership, the support that we have, and you hear my voice a little bit, I'm very emotional about things. It's truly humbling whenever you work with a team of people that support across county lines, think of true economic development, think of things that really need to be done. The motion was made and seconded and carried unanimously, and it was carried that way by a fellow commissioner and supported through the Regional Solutions and everything. Those dollars they're getting on the ground right now. There's been some reimbursement grants. Our operator we have now is upgrading stringers and things as he can to bring it up to 286, some of the bridges. We're going to stretch those dollars as far as we can. The match of the $85,000 in-kind match is being done by the operator. That's a low number of what actually is going to be put out there. So why was it Regional Solutions instead of Connect Oregon? You heard it at the beginning. We were staged for the next Connect Oregon to go to the next level, which those are earmarked now, which is rightfully a good thing for our state. But this was monumental for our railroad. You guys seen the video or the slideshow yesterday. You've seen some of the issues we have. So we're doing it a curve at a time. We're doing it a bridge at a time. But this is monumental, and I can't thank Regional Solutions, the legislature, for making sure we have some dollars and everything. So it's a very good thing. So to start out with that, to tail into the next one, Red Rock Biofuels, we've talked around that for a day and a half now. Red Rock Biofuels is a gasification process to create biofuels out of wood waste, I guess is what you'd call it. In 2014, we started negotiations with Red Rock Biofuels, and the way that works as a county commissioner is those are confidential negotiations. And so I was the commissioner elected to negotiate a 15-year community service fee and bring it back to the Board of Commissioners along with the town of Lakeview, because one representative from the town of Lakeview and the town manager. So that was quite interesting as you have an investor developer come in with this unbelievable, we're going to build this plant. At the time, it's $250 million plant, going to bring natural gas in, and we're going to start taking care of this wood waste you guys have there. And it's like, okay, is this real? Well, they got the grant from the DOD grant, $70 million grant. And we went through the negotiations. I worked really hard on that. It's Jeff Maternack is the CFO for Red Rock. We had multiple meetings, evening meetings, and long and short of it, we got down to basically it's a 15-year plan, 60-40 split. The majority of the tax, which is a community service fee instead of technically a tax, will go to the town. Well, they're putting in a natural gas line. We have natural gas that goes through Lake County, but it's a transmission line. So we need it in Lakeview. Well, they have to bring it 3 miles down. We have the railroad. We have the right-of-way. So I start negotiating that side of it. And so they're going to bring in a 4-inch hard line. Well, that won't supply Lakeview. So I went to thinking, talking about it and everything. So what I done is negotiated with them to oversize that 4-inch line to 6-inch, take a reduction in our community service fee. And so now the county owns the capacity of that line above 4-inch. We don't own natural gas, but we own that capacity. It doesn't get it into Cornerstone where we need it. That's a whole nother leg. But we took a reduced amount over 15 years. The value of that, I have to look here, I believe is about $1.6 million. So we're paying for that through a reduced community service fee with no interest and going to have that line there. But we're still going to receive approximately $45,000 a year that goes up, that we're pretty flexible. It's going to go into taxation into our county. The town is going to get the lion's share. They're going to, of cash, they'll get 180, I think. Huge for our community. So I negotiate that, bring it back to the board. We approve all this. And this is 2014, roughly. Now it's 2018, and they're going to be breaking ground on this plant this year, July 18th. They're going to break ground on this in this community of Lake County. Total cost of the project, and this number is not accurate, but it'll be over $300 million. A third of $1 billion being spent here. The domino effect of this and what this means for forest health, from our national forest to private sector, to be able to get those products off of the forest and get them controlled and used and make this biodiesel. The emissions are so much less. The plant is governed by the EPA, DEQ rules and emission rules, so less smoke out into the woods and all that. They'll produce 10 cars a week of biofuel. They have their biodiesel. They have a contract already with Southwest Airlines, FedEx, and Department of Defense. They already have it sold. They already have the contracts in place. And I could talk for a long time about all this, but it is so huge. Clean air, natural gas, clean water, healthy forest. The domino effect is just huge. What a pivotal time for Lake County. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. And if I may, I want to invite the Regional Solutions team members to come up. I want to be mindful and respectful of your time, but just to illustrate the teamwork that has gone in on the state agency side related to Red Rock, because as Commissioner Winters has mentioned, it is a project that our team has been working on for many years. So if you wouldn't mind, we'll be
That's great, yes,
This
absolutely.
This is a huge part of it that I didn't touch on, but the state partnership's been incredible.
And it's a game changer for your region, so, and for the state, really. So excited to hear how that's coming along.
Hey, real quick, I'm going to introduce the new folks who have joined us. To my immediate right now is our team chair, the longest-serving chair of a regional solutions team that I know of. This is John Jennings with the Department of Land Conservation and Development. You've already met Larry Holzgang with Business Oregon. Next, we've got Nancy Bruner with the Department of Environmental Quality, and then you already know Jared Johnson with ODOT. And they're each going to talk briefly about some of the work that they've done related to this project.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I'm going to go off script real quickly for a second, just to say that you spent some time here in Lakeview, so I hope that you recognize this is an absolutely remarkable community. They're results oriented. I work all over Oregon, and there's no rural community or county that I would rather bet on than these people right here. Jim Walls mentioned the Innovation Learning Center, which is fantastic. What he didn't say was that's not new. That dedication to educating their young people is part of their culture here, and it's absolutely inspiring. And so maybe I wouldn't leave town without have somebody explain that a little bit more. As was mentioned by Ned, I'm John Jennings. I work for DLCD. I'm the long-serving chair, almost a long-suffering chair of, of our team. It was brought to our attention that there was this company looking at Lakeview particularly. Will bring a lot of investment, create a lot of jobs. We got really excited, of course we did. And this is exactly the kind of project that the team enjoyed working on, and we're fortunate here. It allows us to bring our respective disciplines to bear. It really allowed the multi-partnership to flourish. The local partnership was remarkable. First things first, right? Before you can figure out how you're going to build it, you have to figure out if you can build it. And that means land use entitlements. And so we were involved with Larry and Business Oregon, the company, the locals, and we identified some sites that had locational characteristics that were beneficial to the company. Ultimately, they selected a site that was outside the current urban growth boundary. So we worked with them, the city and the county, and we engineered a swap. They perfected that. It was approved by LCDC. It was acknowledged by LCDC, I think about as quickly as one ever has been. And so with that serving as the underpinnings, they were collaterally working on some other things. Again, the pivotal players, as I see it, I'm gonna leave some out, but of course, Business Oregon, ODOT, DEQ, DSL, all played important roles. I'm going to turn it over to Larry Holzgang, and he'll talk a little bit about. Excuse me. we had a script, and I think we've just gone off it. But please, whoever's next, whoever wants to go next, please do.
I believe it's my turn for the record. Jared Johnson, South Central Area Manager. So ODOT's involvement is primarily three things, in addition to some others, but primarily Rail Division has been involved in a lot of how this project is going to impact the rail, some of the additions to the rail. So the Rail Division has been heavily involved in that side. The other two things that we've been involved in is the project site is on the corner of US 395 and a road called Cattermas Road. Cattermas Road currently is a gravel road. So ODOT has worked with the town of Lakeview to utilize their CMAQ funding to improve that road. I believe that project right now is currently in the agreement phase, so we're working on the tail end of that project. The other small piece that we've been working with the Red Rock Company on is permitting, in addition to the other stuff, but primarily permitting access. So making sure that they get the proper access, it's in the right spot, and it's acceptable for their business.
Jared, appreciate that. But on that gravel roadway, CMAQ funds, creative, appropriate. Is there any nexus maybe to immediate opportunity funds given the blooming, the job creation? Have we looked at that funding stream as well?
Potentially, yes, and that's been brought up to the group, and we have discussed that several times.
Hello.
Good morning, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Nancy Bruner, Department of Environmental Quality. The department has already issued an air contaminant discharge permit to cover the air quality aspects of Red Rock. We are in the process of working with the consultants, with DSL, Army Corps of Engineers, trying to make sure we're all on the same page permit-wise. We're currently in the process of preparing to gather information for the 401 certification that DEQ would be doing, which would be in parallel to the Army Corps process. So we're sort of in a holding pattern waiting for the information that we need to move forward with that certification, but all of the permitting entities are working together, talking, and we're having monthly check-in meetings with Red Rock, and things seem to be moving quite smoothly at the moment. So.
To a little bit of everything, ODOT's businesses, DEQ's businesses, land use businesses testify in front of the county commission to say we do need to amend the urban growth boundary, all of those things. But this project also hinged rather greatly on pulling together a rather large financing package. And I'm not going to take credit for that because we have a finance department that worked up till midnight, many nights in a row, trying to pull together in a timely manner a bond package authorization in conjunction with the state treasurer's office. And so Red Rock ultimately was able to issue $245 million of tax-exempt bonds to help finance this project, to go with the other financing that they had. It was a monumental effort on a whole bunch of people in my department, and I got to be the cheerleader. But nonetheless, it was something that I think it was the largest allocation of tax-exempt bonds that the state of Oregon has ever given to one private entity. So kind of plowed some ground and I'm really happy that that project's coming to Lakeview. To a much smaller degree, there is some work with the governor's office on a strategic reserve fund agreement that's involved with this project. And then Annette didn't mention it, but since I'm batting cleanup, Annette has pulled together in the earlier days, meeting every other week to meet with Red Rock and keep state processes on track, to keep Red Rock processes on track, to always just touch base and make sure this project came together. And I think that's been totally invaluable. It's amazing how much time. It's been 4 years, more. So there's been a lot of meetings and a lot of coordination that's been going on, and Annette deserves a lot of the credit for that. So that's the cleanup.
Yes, please, go right ahead.
I have a question about the resource availability, and I'm just wondering if there's enough potential resource for expansion of Red Rock sometime out in the future.
I should let Jim Wall answer that, but I'll take a shot. Probably not. They do need about 140,000 tons, bone-dry tons of wood fiber coming in, and they've already took a circle that is out, in excess of 100 miles to bring that material to the plant. I really don't think they're economically going to reach out much further than that, and I know that they would much prefer to source their material a whole bunch closer than 100 miles. So probably not.
That's the 140 annually? Is that their?
Yeah, yes.
So the
140,000
will convert to 140,000 gallons of the renewable fuel.
15 million gallons of renewable fuel. So about half of it is jet fuel, a quarter is naphtha, and a quarter is biodiesel.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. If there are no further questions, we'll be happy to wrap.
Let me just say that the ability to stay with a project like this and not lose hope and keep the community together is not an easy task. And I think that this project in particular and a lot of the things that you have going on right now it's generation changing for individuals in this community. And so I'm just really proud to be here and hear about what's happening and see that these things are coming together. And, I wonder about a rebranding or, how do you really help to, Mr. Wells was talking about the company that was saying, well, but you don't have this and you don't have that. And he's, wait a minute, yes, we do. So I hope that's also part of the story here, that we can talk about what's happening in this part of the state, because it matters to the economic vitality, but also the livability here too. So just want to commend you on those efforts. I'm sure it's not easy, but also how can we help going forward too in making sure that you're supported and being able to see through some of these things that you're working on. So great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we have an informational item, and this is the monthly progress report on the implementation of House Bill 2017. Mr. Brower.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, for the record, I'm Travis Brower, ODOT's Assistant Director, and I will give you a very brief overview of ODOT's implementation of HB 2017, which is humming along quite nicely, I have to say. You have in your packet a dashboard of our implementation, and I will speak to just a couple of the highlights, because we really are at essentially the peak of implementation right at the moment, with new programs and efforts underway. The areas that we have laid out here for you as highlights are recruitment. We have a July 1st timeframe at which the new positions are available, and all accounts are that we are doing very well in hiring for those positions. We also have the final meeting of the Portland Value Pricing Policy Advisory Committee, which Commissioner Simpson co-chairs, will be on Monday, and it appears that that PAC is heading toward finalizing recommendations to the Commission, which then will come to you at a special meeting in July. The Safe Routes to School grant competitive infrastructure program will open next month, assuming you approve the rules that are on the consent calendar later today. And then the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund formula solicitation is going out the door. So we are really starting to see the rubber hit the road, and we're starting to see very significant progress on all of these efforts under HB 2017. So with that, I will let you ask any questions you may have.
Well, I very much appreciate the update. Do we have particular questions at all, or it's fairly straightforward? Things are moving on, so great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have an action item, and this is the request to designate the Lake County Replacement Grant recipient for the Connect Oregon project. And I will turn it over to Jerry. Hi.
Good morning. For the record, Jerry Bohart, TDD Division Administrator. I'm just going to take 2 minutes, set the stage, and then turn it over to Commissioner Winters. So it has been the practice with Connect Oregon, really when we're seeing some sort of substantive changes with regard to a Connect Oregon application. Since you are the ones that approved the original ones, that's why we bring it forward to the Commission. So that's the request for the approval. And I think Commissioner Winters may go into a little bit of the history, but essentially what has happened was the owner of the railroad was not completing the work for Connect Oregon. So in fact, there have been no monies expended currently on the Connect Oregon. And we did send a letter, actually Director Garrett sent a letter terminating the grant application. We also, in the grant award, there was an appeal process as part of that. They did not appeal that decision. That closed on June 8th. So we are really at a place where we can turn the grant over to a new applicant. We should have a letter in the packet that showed that Lake County was willing to take on that responsibility, and I think most importantly was willing to take on the maintenance responsibilities. And that's really a key for Connect Oregon, because we talk about the 20-year life with regards to these funds. So with that, I think turn it over to the Commissioner, but just want to make sure we get the action at the very end. So thank you. Commissioner.
It's the Brad show once again, apparently. Thank you, Commission. I think you know the need. I think we've painted the picture quite well. I've asked Toby to set up here. He operates the Goose Lake rail line for us now, in case you have any questions. Really, I think you need to be reassured that the county will make sure that this grant is taken care of. The 20-year expectation of the grant, or mandatory 20-year part of the grant will be fulfilled. Our history as Lake County, won't be our first Connect Oregon grant that comes through the county coffers. So I hope that gives you the comfort. Goes back to rail grants that Connect grant we've got back, I think it's 3 of the county was one that got that one. We have had multiple on our airport. So your faith in us to be able to manage this, your faith in us to be able to keep the railroad operating for the next 20 years, I hope we've laid that out to you. So that's what I want to be able to put forward is the county itself. Is there the match for this? It's a $365,000 grant. Total is $500,000 with the match at 30% match. That's a little bit more than 30%. We're staying with that. And as a partner, that match will be made by the operator. The uniqueness of having the contract we have with the operator is we don't take much money from them. For them to lease this line, there's a minimal cost. We expect for monies to go back into the infrastructure. The county, we're not going to take that money, that revenue away from them. Show us, put it into the infrastructure, keep upgrading that. So that's our theory. So to be able to get to the match of the $200,000, it's another one of those that'll go above that. Then you start just talking about the ballast and the labor and everything goes with that. So with that said, I will let you guys ask if there's any questions of Toby as the operator or take action, whichever one. But thank you very much for the time today.
Do you have comments that you'd like to make?
I'd just like to. Yeah, thank you. Yes. Toby Van Alt, first time managing member of the Goose Lake Railway, and we're the new operator for Lake County Railroad. We've had this opportunity to come in and do some work on the railroad and try and turn a corner. The county had recognized that the railroad management wasn't necessarily going the way it needed to go last year, and through us being connected together with the county and my business partner, who is Bruce Addington, who owns Cornerstone Industrial Minerals, the largest shipper on the line. We've been able to put together a partnership that's going to move the railroad into the future. We're very excited about the opportunity. We've developed a team here. The railroad has currently 8 full-time employees, and we've added a 9th seasonal summer position to help out with maintenance. So we've been able to not only preserve the jobs that the railroad connects to the outside markets, but also to develop the jobs with the railroad here in this community. I think Commissioner Simpson had asked yesterday regarding the jobs that the funds that go into the railroad help support, and Commissioner Winters had spoken to the positive impact of when contractors come in and perform work. Just to circle back to that and answer your question, between the sawmill, Cornerstone, the contractor that hauls the trucks the minerals from the mine up near Paisley down to the processing plant here in Lakeview for Cornerstone, and the railroad, there's about 125 full-time jobs, family wage benefited, that are in this community that are connected directly to the railroad. Anyway, obviously I'm very passionate about short-line railroading, keeping communities, especially in the rural part of the state, in connection with rail service. This is a very challenged railroad. It's very low volume. We average about 100 carloads a month, and we haul them about 110 miles to our Union Pacific interchange. So economically, it's a fragile railroad. With the contributions that Connect Oregon has made in the past, the railroad's taken some steps forward. We don't have an exact history on this, but in taking a best guess of understanding railroad history and the economics of railroading, the Southern Pacific Railroad probably started underinvesting in this line in the 1960s, and it's continued to downward spiral. I like to refer to, well, I shouldn't say I like to refer to, but when explaining this to people, I refer to railroads as wasting assets because they deteriorate in 2 ways. One, overuse, tonnage moving over them, and the other is simply time. And while this is a light tonnage branch, not having proper investment for the investment the railroad really needs for 50 years makes a significant impact. Like I said, Connect Oregon has made some significant contributions to that. We're very excited to have this opportunity to put these ties in. This is going to help beef the railroad up. It helps us support some of the pictures you saw yesterday. We'll be able to eliminate some of those problems, move the railroad forward. And certainly the county had commissioned a engineering study about a year ago that identified that in order to fix the problems we have now to get the railroad to a Class 1 track, I believe the number was about $6 million, maybe a hair more than that. That number, of course, is we're a year out. That number's and lumber prices have gone up. You know, ties are more expensive, unfortunately. So that number's grown a little bit just to get to Class 1 in the near term. To get to where we need to be for Class 2, which would allow quicker transit times and to beef the railroad infrastructure up that much more, was up in the $20 to $30 million range. For me as a small businessman, why that's a huge number to me. If you really look at this and the value of this infrastructure to the community over time, if we could continue to work through programs like Connect Oregon and other opportunities, you know, over the next 5 or 10, even 10 years to invest that $30 million in the railroad, that will give that infrastructure the support it needs to be here for basically generations to come. It'll get us over that hump. So we certainly appreciate your help with that. Anything, you know, going forward that where we can find opportunities for that are going to be significant for this community. And of course, I'm speaking very specifically to railroad infrastructure, but it's exciting to see what's going on here and all these pieces as they come together. The natural gas infrastructure is significant for the community, not only for Red Rock, but for future opportunities. For the community here for, you know, more efficient heating opportunities, and then even for my partner with Cornerstone, because currently they have to dry the ore in a kiln that uses recycled waste oil, which is a great use for recycled waste oil, but it's very expensive. It has to be trucked out of the Portland area down here, and it's got a high cost. So they could actually see cost reductions there. The railroad, it connects this community to distant markets. So Collins cuts a variety of products here. They cut pine and whitewood that goes to a number of customers. Midwest shipments go by rail. The perlite, we have domestically, our furthest customer for the perlite is in Florida, so it goes all the way across the country. Outside of the country, there's shipments to Canada, and we actually are part of a supply chain that gets perlite to Korea. By railing up to the Port of Tacoma and being transloaded containers. So, you know, if you look at this branch line from the outside in, it's a struggling branch line in a rural community. It connects this community to not only national distant markets, but actually it's an international supply chain that gets Oregon product out to the international market. So, anyway, it's exciting to be a part of. I appreciate your time today, and thank you.
You could just bottle all that you said. That is incredible. I mean, that is quite a story. And it's just too darn bad that you're not passionate about what you do as well, because, but, you know, sometimes these types of situations, someone doesn't step up and they don't take maybe that risk or have that conversation. And so we recognize that this is an important part of the economic vitality of your area and the state as a whole and even beyond. So I'm grateful to see that there was that ability to step up and partner and make sure that this happens. So do we have questions?
I have one.
Please, go right ahead.
Good to see you, Toby.
Thanks, Martin.
I have a question about your accepted condition and how long you expect to get to Class 1.
We're going to need at least all of the time horizon in the next 18 to 24 months that it's going to take for Red Rock to build. If we can find some additional funding to help with that. To speak more specifically to that, we can address a lot of the worst parts of the railroad and address the bridge and approach infrastructure and crossing so that we can meet the requirements for moving hazardous materials over accepted track at the 5 load per train limit. Operationally for us, it's going to be a challenge because we will have to. Currently, we run once a week because we interchange with Union Pacific once a week, and that service schedule works for the customer base here. By adding those 10 cars a week of hazardous materials, we will have to make 2 round trips a week, which will add to operating costs. The unfortunate offset to the additional income of that customer is that those additional dollars that go to operating expenses can't go into track infrastructure. We can basically phase this in. I don't know if that answers your question quite the way you're looking for, but there's a process that we can follow to get this in steps and be able to provide the service to Red Rock as we're improving the railroad. Realistically, looking at funding timelines, you know, it could take us 3 or so years with funding to get to the point that we need to be up and going. In the event that obtaining a build grant, the timeline on that, once we were awarded the funds, I would imagine we could do the work within 12 months. So the great win there, obviously, if we are able to secure the build grant, is we can get the work done probably coinciding with the startup of Red Rock and have the railroad at Class 1 at the time that they start up, which would be spectacular. Obviously, safety is a huge priority for us. We operate the railroad in a very cautious manner because it's such a fragile infrastructure. We actually run the loaded trains at 7 miles an hour off the branch. So I always say it's, unfortunately, it takes us all week to go over to the interchange and back because we go so slowly, but not to tempt fate here. But the good news about our operating practices with regard to this is that we've been operating since September of last year. We have not derailed a car yet. So, yeah, and like I said, I really don't want to tempt fate there. You know, hubris and all that stuff. But we're very pleased that we've been able to have that success, and we continue to strive for that.
Well, I'm glad you've got goals and at least an estimated timeline. And safety is, as you and I both know, very critical on rail.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
So I would welcome a motion.
I'll move to request approval to designate Lake County as the replacement grant recipient for the
Oh, your mic isn't on. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, you're just fine.
I'll start over.
Okay.
Move to request approval to designate Lake County as the replacement grant recipient for the previously approved Connect Oregon 6 project. The original grant recipient was LRY LLC, DBA Lake Railway, the operator on the line at the time of the original application.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, well done. Yes, absolutely. Next, we have a request for the approval of the ODOT winter maintenance strategy. And this was a requirement within House Bill 2017. Mr. Mather.
Good morning, members of the Commission. Paul Mather, Highway Division Administrator. What am I doing wrong? Oh, there you go. Okay, thank you. I know it. Oh, where was I? Paul Mather, Highway Division Administrator here. Good morning. Good to see you. Here to request approval of our winter maintenance strategy. Madam Chair, as you mentioned, this is a part of House Bill 2017 that requires the Transportation Commission to develop a statewide winter maintenance strategy that includes the use of rock salt or similar solid products and take consideration environmental practices. And so I'm going to walk through how we go through that balance, or at least our proposed strategy of how we go through that balance. The first key step you're going to hear me talk about is just a phased approach in adding tools to our toolbox. So there's two concepts in there. One is we're going to go relatively slowly in introducing salt into our program, as well as other things that I'm going to talk about to continue to advance and improve our winter maintenance strategy. And some of those other things, just adding more tools to our toolbox. So it's not just salt and us out there just putting more and more salt down. We have other tools that we're going to add as well. The key part that I would like your input and ultimately approval on is those guiding principles. So as we work to phase this in and add tools to our toolbox, we're looking for some guidance in doing that. And those guiding principles is what we're looking from you. And then an annual reporting, so the accountability, kind of the backside of this, that we come back annually and just show you what we've been doing and allow you to course correct and continue to give us guidance on this. So that's the kind of the guts of our approach here to comply with House Bill 2017. Just a little background, we have a lot of tools that we use to remove snow. Our snow plows, our snow blowers, we have graders, we use liquid de-icers today. in a limited way, and I've been in front of you, in front of the commission before, talking about our limited approach in using salt in the last few years. Then obviously traction tires and change and so forth from a driver's responsibility standpoint. Some of the other tools that we've added to our toolbox, you'll see some pretty impressive tow plows up here. We've added 5 of these on 84 in Eastern Oregon and Region 5 this last year. Made a huge difference in our ability to keep the roadway clear and open. You'll see the trailer actually looks like it's jackknifing behind the truck. It's held there by hydraulics, and both the trailer and the truck are able to put sand or salt or any other material down. And it's impressive to watch in action, so much so the drivers see that and they're like, I don't want to get anywhere near that thing. In a way, yeah. And they're an impressive piece of equipment. In the upper right, you'll see our traditional wing plow that we have, so the snow plow in the front, and then we deploy a wing plow usually on the right side. What we've added on some of our trucks on the interstate again is that left wing plow. So they're able to cover much more of the lanes as they go down the roadway with those what we call dual wings. As I mentioned, safety is a partnership. We need to do our part in informing the motorist and keeping the roads in the best conditions we can, but oftentimes Mother Nature has her own plans of how to impact our highways, and so we need to communicate and drivers need to be prepared for winter conditions, change traction tires, plan your trip differently, just be prepared in that partnership that we have. One of the things we're also deploying is some technology to help communicate with drivers. This is in the Baker Valley on 84 where we have automated speed signs. So as we get low visibility or road conditions by sensors in the road, these speed limits are automatically changed. We can do some manual overrides, but they're set up to be automatic based on the conditions. We're going to have a similar system on Highway 97 and a similar one on Mount Hood that are in the development stages now. So we'll see deployment of technology as well to communicate real-time information to drivers. So here are those guiding principles that I mentioned to you that we're going to be using as we deploy some of our winter maintenance strategies. The interstate and the freeways are what we have to keep working. In any kind of disaster that we have, we know we have to get the freeways working, and the freeways don't work, or the interstate doesn't work, the system doesn't work. So we need to focus there first. Our heavy freight routes, keeping trucks upright, keeping trucks moving is an important part of keeping the whole system working. Crashes and closures, focusing as we do on our whole safety program on our fatals and serious crashes, as well as closures. Focusing on areas that are frequently snow and ice events. So areas that may every couple years get an event, maybe not so much, but the mountain passes or the areas of our system that we can pretty much count on every year are going to have a major delay or an event or where we're going to focus. And then obviously, and I'll talk more about this, is to minimize those environmental impacts that salt or some of our other products may have. I've shared this with you before, but here's our kind of our current state that where we use salt today. The green portions on here, so US 95 in the southeast corner of the state, and then the Six Pass and I-5 is where we started using salt and started our learning process on how to use salt in 2012. When I say learning process, it's not learning whether salt works or not. We know salt works. The question is, can we use them in a way that we can integrate it with our other tools and use it in a very minimal way but have maximizing its benefit to the drivers. In the winter of 2017, we expanded that use of salt further north on I-5 over Sexton Pass to Canyonville, and then in the I-84 in the northeast portion of the state. The balance of the interstate, we have what we call limited use, and so if we have a storm or something that comes through in those areas, we have an approval process to use salt in those areas, which includes the Portland metro area. Some of our environmental best practices on the photos there you see on the left, that's an example of a salt shed where we store salt. One of the ways that across the country salt has impacted the environment is through getting into groundwater and getting into wells and other places, and so we take this very, very seriously And our salt sheds are state-of-the-art as far as protecting that possibility with the environment. We also have implemented best practices. On the right there, you'll see the back end of an application of one of our plow trucks. Obviously, the salt comes out of that chute there in the very center. But if you look right above the mud flaps there in the tires, you'll see some little nozzles. One of our tools that we use is we actually use our de-icers, and we'll put that down, what we call pre-wet the roadway, so when the salt hits the road, it doesn't bounce and go everywhere, and we can use a lot less salt if we just use a little pre-wetting agent to get that salt to stick right where we want it, and we can really reduce our application rates of salt. So the use itself, we've targeted towards some limited or targeted storms. And so these are the storms where we have snow coming in and then the forecast is for a cold spell that's going to last for days or even a week beyond that. Those are the situations we know pack is going to build up on the roadway, and our traditional methods of removing that pack isn't going to be successful. And so those type of conditions that we have or are forecasted are the ones we've targeted to use salt. We've used a very low amount of salt per lane mile, so 200 pounds of salt per lane mile of length. And that picture there shows you about how much salt you would see on the roadway, again, in that kind of pre-wetting type of approach that I showed you. Just a comparison across the state, just to illustrate how different our approach is than any other state in the nation. Washington State is probably the closest, but in New York, they put down over 1 million tons of salt on an annual basis. Pennsylvania puts down over 700,000 tons. WashDOT puts down over 100,000 tons. Last year, we put down 7 tons. So it's a very dramatically different. We have a different climate than the Midwest. We have different issues in the Midwest. And again, this targeted approach really limits the amount that we put down and maximizes the benefit. I think in one weekend, the city of Indianapolis put down more salt than we do in an entire year. So monitoring, we have on the environmental side, so far in the areas that I showed you on the map on the Siskiyous and on US 95, we have not seen impact of vegetation. We have seen chloride levels on one stream in the Siskiyous be elevated, and we're doing some monitoring and research on that of what is causing that and how our application rates will affect those level of chlorides, and it's part of our research to see how much we use actually gets into the stream and whether we can adjust or impact that. So far we have not seen any impacts to roads or bridges, but we know that's another thing that we're monitoring, that it will deteriorate specifically concrete pavements with its reinforcing steel as well as our bridges. So another thing that we're monitoring as we go forward, and another reason to minimize our use whenever possible.
Does that require that in the future if we were to expand, that we would want to look at different types of coating applications that would be able to protect, so we have even a secondary, some other costs associated with bringing on this application?
Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. There's other secondary costs. That's one of them. The other is our equipment. We'll go through equipment a lot faster, and talking to some people that other neighboring states that use salt, your life expectancy of your equipment that use it, even if you're using stainless steel beds or other equipment, you'll go through them a lot faster, so additional costs will be. Those salt sheds, for example, will be additional cost. But we're seeing, as you'll see here, some significant benefits out on the highway. We have a strong value in this Department of Safety, and we also have a strong value of the environment, and trying to find the right balance between those values that we have. You'll see here in the results in 2017, significant reduction in crashes, mobility, chain restrictions, some pretty impressive numbers that we've been able to see. And so targeting those areas where we anticipate seeing these impressive numbers, not where we may see a slight increase, but really looking at those areas that we anticipate to see these kind of benefits from that limited use of salt. Our annual reporting is continue. I talked a little bit about the research we're doing in that one stream on the Siskiyous, continue to partner with DEQ and ODF&W as we do our annual reporting. In the packet, you'll see our past annual reports. You'll see how we have been monitoring and reporting on that, and that's the example of what the annual reports would look like going forward. Here are the things that would be included in those: the implementation status, so how are we doing in implementing those guiding principles and kind of moving forward, the quantities, how much that we've actually used, what kind of results we're seeing on the crash closure side, what our research is finding, and any regulatory concerns that we may have. Those agencies that Fish and Wildlife and DEQ may have will also be reported in that annual report for you or anybody else to see in the annual report. We've done a bunch of outreach, particularly in Northeast Oregon as we expanded to an ID4 involving the tribes or area commissions. We've held workshops with targeted trucking associations and other people, media blitz. Our Ask ODA folks in the director's office get a lot of inquiries, and so we've got some good information for them to share. Salt is a passionate issue on both sides. People want us to use salt all the time everywhere, and people don't want us to use salt anywhere, anytime. So trying to find, that, again, that balance that we're going to see with very limited targeted applications, some pretty significant results is what we're trying to accomplish. So again, in summary, what we're asking for is approval of the strategy, which is really based on that phased approach. Kind of go slow and keep our kind of eyes open and learn as we go and not rush into this, but also apply those guiding principles and then the accountability on the back end with the annual reporting to the commission. So with that, any questions?
Would just note that we do have a letter from the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, and they note that there is a good working partnership there.
Yep.
I think they call out some concerns that you've noted as well, but I just wanted to, put that on the record that we are working closely and monitoring.
And we will
as
continue
well.
to work with them and partner and with them, as well as the, like I said, DEQ and ODFNW.
Great. Please.
Paul, have winters gotten worse at all? Let's just say over the past 10 years, especially in this region, just from what I heard earlier, 12 feet of snow and whatnot in the winters. I'm just curious if it's gotten worse or has it been stable, or is it just, it is what it is?
And not being a meteorologist or a expert, I can just kind of anecdotally from winter maintenance side, I would say they have gotten more extreme in that we've had more snow some winters and other winters extremely mild. So we've really, it seemed in the last 10 years have gone to extremes on the mild side and extremes on the severe side of things. Not this very past winter, the winter before, what I would consider a severe winter. Probably one of the worst that I've seen in my career. But this last winter was probably average to mild type of range that we've seen from a winter condition standpoint.
And is that 70 tons a year a happy medium, or are we drastically behind in terms of what the requirement or what the demand is?
Well, it depends on the severity of the winter. You'll see that number fluctuate as we get into more severe winters or less severe winters. What we want to do is target it to those types of storms that I described and those types of areas where it's going to have the most impact, and not really limit us or target any specific amount. It's more of how we use it and when we use it is really what we're focusing our crews on keeping track of. And then we just look at the data and tell us, so how bad was this winter and how much did we use, rather than putting a limit on the amount that we have or a target on the amount. It's more on how and where and when.
So we have an action item, and this is to adopt the strategy.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the draft ODOT winter maintenance strategy, which is a requirement of House Bill 2017.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a discussion and an action item, and it's a request for the approval of ODOT's proposed 1921 agency requested budget, including proposed policy package. Hello, Daryl.
Good morning. It's Daryl Ficker, ODOT budget. Okay, Jackie.
I turned it off.
Oh.
I was trying to follow Jackie's.
Thanks, Paul. All right. Just to recap a little bit, this is the approval request for the budget. The budget is due to DAS on August 31st. Governor's budget is due out October 1st. And Ways and Means should be through in late June. They're starting 2.5 weeks earlier than before, so we should have a budget before Labor Day, and before 4th of July. Just to recap, this is the third meeting we've been to. First one was on the budget process. The second one was division presentations and what their policy packages were. And the third one here is we're seeking approval of the request budget. The current service level budget is up by approximately $218 million. That is to give the agency the amount of money to do the same work they were doing before. Part of that, or a big portion of that, are phased in of projects for construction projects. About 190 million of that 218 is for that. Revenue is up modestly and growing a little steadily. Without the 2017 money, 2017 money is giving us a pretty good boost. The base revenue has a little growth to it, but not very much. Policy option packages are $70.7 million and 78 FTE. Most of the FTE is in two packages, one for DMV and one for highway and TPD. The proposed budget is up 6.9% from the prior biennium. Again, not a real big increase yet. Most of the changes for House Bill 2017 will be coming in the 21-23 biennium. They're doing work on those now, but we're not going to see a real big push until we get out the door a little further out. Highway Division budget's up $190 million. Most of that is for project-related preliminary engineering, construction, and for phasing in of all the new positions. Positions that we got for House Bill 2017, both in June of 2017 and February of 2018. Many of those positions were not 24-month positions. This phases those in and gets them full 24 months going forward. Debt service is down $160.9 million when refinancing of bonds is considered. This is different than when you refinance your house and your loan is X and it stays X. With state budget laws, you pay the whole one off and then you refinance the new one, so it doubles up on the accounting in there. So it's just a state budget law, and that's how it goes. The next slide will show you a little bit of where we're at as far as trend and actuals. So right now we're sitting about $550 million estimated debt service for 1921. Of that, 350 million is highway funds, 120 almost is lottery funds. So we're staying fairly constant going forward. It does not have in it debt service for the authorized bonds from House Bill 2017. It's anticipated we'll sell those late in 21, so we wouldn't have any debt service until a 21-23 biennium. We sell those in the spring of 2021. Personal services are up $76.2 million. Again, that's not a huge amount. We don't have raises have been fairly small. It makes all the positions from House Bill 2017 permanent, so that includes those. What it does not include is the personal services for the 44 positions that we're asking for in the policy package or the one for DMV. Those would be over and above that. Again, service supplies are up $190 million, mainly for construction projects in highway. Capital outlay is down by $16.5 million. Most of that is just some chatter going around in the budget, money moving from capital outlay to S&S. As DMV STP project moves forward, they'll be having less money on buying software and more money on implementing and other stuff like that. So it's not really changing a lot of dollar amounts, but it's changing category from one to the other. The big increase is special payments for $197 million. That is primarily for transit to implement the money coming from the employee payroll tax. That'll be phasing in as it goes through coming up. Recapping of the policy packages that we talked about last time, $70.7 million positions for House Bill 2017 for Real ID, DMV for third-party testing, and then 2 for central services, 1 for an open data portal to decide what data is publishable, and then how to get that out to the people, and then 1 for IT security positions and risk assessments. High division budget from 15-17 going to pros 19-21 is up significantly. Includes House Bill 2017 projects and moving forward. The POP 110, 44 positions includes 2 positions that will end up being in TPD and 42 will be in highway. POP 120 is for State Radio Project. It has 2 components to it. One is $2.3, $2.5 million for operations, and then the majority of it, $7.5 million, is for capital improvement to make improvements to towers, to microwaves, whatever else. As we did the construction project over 7 or 8 years, we did the ones that need to be fixed. Now we're going back. We have some ongoing maintenance. We have ones that were not bad then, but they will be bad eventually. And so this will allow us to address that. The budget for 1921 for highway includes both phase in and phase out. So we have projects that we had funded through JT and everything else that are being paid for. Those are going away. We have House Bill 2017 money going in. Those aren't necessarily the same limitation, but for highway as a whole, they're showing a net increase. DMV is up for their work. They've got 4 policy packages. STP program, $22 million. That is keeping them within the $90 million for 10 years that they have for this project. This is really just doing the next portion of it. POP 140 is for maintenance of the software that we're purchasing from FAST. So this will allow FAST to continue to do upgrades, to do versions, whatever else they need to do to make this happen. It's $3.6 million proposed in 1921. That will double in 21-23. Real ID has 24 positions and some needed hardware to do to get Real ID, get it out there compliant prior to the deadline of October 20. So this allowed DMV to move forward on that. Then third-party drive test just allows more and more third-party vendors to be giving drive tests and taking a load off of our offices.
I have a quick question on the 24 positions for Real ID. Are any of those limited duration for the rollout, or do we anticipate the ongoing need for 24?
Currently, those are planned as permanent positions. I guess we'll find out as we go along with the new system and everything else, how it works, how many people come and get them, how fast they come in to get them. We'll see. But for now, they are permanent positions. Motor carriers budget gone up from $56.9 million to $70 million, modest increase, paying for FTE and paying for the new positions they have related to House Bill 2017. Treasury Program Development has a $1 policy package for Connect Oregon. It's a placeholder. And again, 2 of the positions that are in the Highway POP 110 will be going to TPD for their stuff. So it'll show up in their budget when it's all said and done. Here's the one with the large increase. Public transit is going up to $356 million in the proposed $19.21 million budget. Almost entirely that is for the employee payroll tax running through the transit budgets. Rail budget showing no change in FTE, modest increase in dollar amounts. General fund for passenger rail is included in the base budget, so it's not something we have to go ask for at this point in time. That's $10 million going forward. Transportation safety, their FTE is changing by 3 based on the positions that we have for a project we're working with OSP on. Those positions will transit over to OSP in the next biennium. They have an increase in their budget. They're getting more work out the door with the same FTE they had before, so they should, good for them on that. Central Services has 2 policy packages. Package 170 related to House Bill 3361. This is the data portal. It's looking at what data do we have that we could or should be publishing to people, and then how do we do that? There's 3 positions tied with that. And House Bill Prop 180 is 4 security positions for ISB. What that does is Senate Bill 90 removed positions from a lot of state agencies and centralized them at State CIO's office. There were some activities that got left behind that State CIO's office wasn't going to do, and so this allows us to go back and pick those things up that needed to happen. Other state agencies are doing the same thing. Debt service, including refinancing. So this shows you what it looks like when we refinance the bonds. If you look at the $1 billion, $710 million, and $549 million, the amount that we're paying out the door, all 3 of those is roughly the same amount of money. What's changing is we refinance those, and on the books, they're going to show up as double counting that. The increase for general fund for debt service is for the state radio project. ODOT has paid its fair share for that now, and we're expecting that the state general fund is going to pick up the remaining part of that going forward. Non-limited infrastructure bank, essentially flat. This is for loans primarily to local governments. It's a revolving fund. It's been around for 20 years, more or less. Local governments use it as bridge money, as a wide variety of purposes. Capital Instruction has 2 policy packages, Package 190 for South Coast Maintenance Facility and Package 195 for Central Coast. This is getting two maintenance stations up for as triage facilities to have, in case of Cascadia earthquake event. This will allow us to purchase land and do site prep to get going on these projects. And finally, capital improvement is up by $2 million for a phase-in for work that related to when we did the salt sheds. Some work got moved out, and this allows that work to happen. It's a one-time only type of a deal, so that'll bring that number up. And I'll answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. I know that you've been before us a couple of other times walking us through the budget, and we've had an opportunity to ask you questions offline too. Do we have anything, any additional questions or comments at this point? Okay. If not, I would welcome a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the ODOT proposed 2019-2021 agency request budget, including the proposed policy packages.
Excellent. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we're running a little bit ahead of time. We're going to go ahead and take just a 3-minute break. Does that work?
Perfect.
Okay, great. All right. So we'll, how about 5? We'll come back at 5 after. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and reconvene. And I'm going to move the agenda around just a tad bit and take the consent calendar next. And I understand there's a ball game that begins at noon. And so we are about partnership with the Department of Transportation. And so we want to make sure that some of our partners can get on their way as well. So Director Garrett, I will turn over to you and the consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I'd like to do is offer kind of a two-motion approach here. Given the fact that Commissioner Callery did not attend the May 17th meeting, what I'd like to do is ask for approval of consent calendar item 1, because it's my understanding, and rightfully so, that Commissioner Callery will abstain from that vote since he wasn't engaged. So with that, Madam Chair, I'd ask for the approval of consent calendar item number 1.
Okay, and may I have a motion, please?
So moved to approve consent calendar.
Okay, item 1?
Item 1.
Okay, great. Further discussion. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay,
Very
motion
good.
carries.
And Madam Chair, given the fact that there have been no concerns or conflicts expressed for consent calendar items 2 through 17, I would ask the Commission to approve consent calendar items 2 through 17 in block.
Excellent. I would welcome a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to approve consent calendar items 2 through 17.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for the partnership, Business Oregon. Not that we will use that, but you know.
Go Beavs,
Yes,
right?
Go Beavs, exactly. Yes. You are welcome to stay, but I just thought if that helps a tad. So, wonderful. Okay. Let's move on to the next item, which is the 2019 Oregon Transportation Safety Performance Plan. And, okay, great.
Morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is
Please.
Troy Costales, the Administrator for the Safety Division for the Oregon Department of Transportation.
I'm Victor Hoffer. I'm the chair of the Oregon Transportation Safety Committee. I started EMS in 1980, before most of you were born. I continued to be a career paramedic with Marion County Fire District Number 1 in Salem.
Well, Madam Chair, this morning we're requesting approval of the 2019 Transportation Safety Performance Plan. This document acts as our centerpiece related to the programs done in the Safety Division, and also acts as our application to the US DOT for highway safety funds through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. It also brings in some of the other funds that the Commission has given to us and the legislature by statute has given to us, for instance, for driver education and motorcycle safety that are outside the federal funds. So we try and bring as a complete package of safety as we can to you. In this morning's request for your approval would ask for an additional approval related to an amendment for language on page 101 in the Region 4 area. There was language that was put in that particular chapter that was inappropriate and should not have been included in that conversation. And so we've offered to you a suggestion of alternative language around the issue of impaired driving in the Region 4 area of the state. For Region 4, impaired driving, speed, and lane departure are the 3 primary categories. And that chapter talks about those items and the data that is there and the actions that we're moving forward. But in the problem statement, we put words in there we should not have, and so we're asking for a replacement of that particular portion of the chapter. What I'd like to do is turn over to Chair Hoffer a bit to talk to you about one of the 25 programs that are in this document. He's going to highlight one of those that the OTSC this past year has worked on steadily in partnership with Ms. Bohart's division from Transportation Development.
Thank you. Chair Baney, Commissioners, Director Garrett. I want to talk to you for just a moment about safe routes to school. We have Leanne Ferguson working on the infrastructure portion of safe routes, which is sidewalks, rapid flashing beacons, and that goes with House Bill 2017. On the non-infrastructure side, we thank you for giving us discretionary funding. And Handy Manlove works with that, and it's encouragement to safety, it's education, and it's traffic enforcement. And it's also helping our local people do improvements and help them. Having said that, I want to say thank you for the hard work you do listening to the budget. Oh my gosh, I'm glad I'm not in the commission, and I don't want to be. I've got my hands full. But your support of transportation safety is very vital. As a medic, I get to know what happens right away. Sometimes we save a life and we shock them, which is fun. Sometimes you just give them sugar and wake them up. But it's an immediate result. For us in highway safety, and for you, we have to have the faith that we are able to get moms and dads and boys and girls, our friends and family home today and then tomorrow. It's a tough job to have faith sometimes in what we do. But I want to thank you for that faith and that support, not just for safe routes to school, but for all you do.
It takes leaders to also step up to serve and to help us to guide our commissions and the councils that help to inform and advise us. So thank you so much for your leadership as well.
Thank you, Chair Brady.
And Madam Chair, so this plan is the annual implementation of the long-range plan that the commission passed in November of 2016. And so every year we come out with the document, say, here's what we're doing about it. Here's where we're addressing the policy statements, the guiding principles that you have put in place related to highway safety. So this is what this year's request is for the 2019 program. And as mentioned by Mr. Ficker in the budget, you may have seen for the safety division an increase in revenue. Part of that is this application with the federal transportation funding coming through. There are a couple program areas that we became eligible for funding, and the second presentation will be part of that around pedestrian safety. Those are all embedded, and we've made that part of our program with the 5 members of the OTSC's leadership to implement those programs all across the state. With that, Madam Chair, more than happy to answer any questions for this request of the performance plan approval with that one particular paragraph being amended.
So thank you for that. And I just wanted to verify that the OTSC did have an opportunity to meet and discuss that language, and that's their recommendation, your recommendation as well?
Chair Brady, we acted on it 2 days ago?
Correct.
2 days ago.
Okay.
And I actually made the motion myself, which is against rules of order, but I did it anyway.
Okay, well, we won't take away your birthday.
And it's been approved unanimously by our OTSC.
Wonderful. And then a question in terms of whether it's work zone or it's speed or whatnot, enforcement is an important partner in that equation. And so in some of the strategies, I wondered if we shouldn't be looking at elevating the advocacy for supporting OSP in, and I know from a department perspective, that's a challenge. From a citizen member committee, maybe a little bit more of an ability. Certainly to your commission, we can do that work. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on how that conversation has gone within the committee work and where we can maybe be leaning in to help our agency partner there too.
Madam Chair, great item in relationship to safety. That is one of our struggles, is just law enforcement presence. We may have all of the revenue in a particular program to be able to go that way, but if they aren't staff from the law enforcement point of view to be able to work the issue, there isn't staff there. What we've tried to do in some cases is back away from some of the specialty money, so from the drug enforcement or DUI enforcement, where you have to have special training to do some of that work, and take some of the funds in relationship to safety belt and speed, because for you and I on the street, we're not sure why the officer's there or why someone's pulled over. We just see an officer there. And with the very first reaction, no matter how fast you're going, you take your foot off the accelerator and you pay attention. So part of what we have tried to do is maximize how we can get any officer, it could be someone that's a detective working Fish and Wildlife or in the gaming area, that they could be on the road as well and not just keep going to that same small group of specialty officers. We still support them, but at the same time, we're trying to broaden it out. But you are spot on. It's not just the Oregon State Police. It's all across this entire state. I don't know of any law enforcement agency that is at the staffing level that they have set as a metric or as a goal. From the Oregon State Police point of view, for their FTE personnel, based on the population of the state, we're either 48th or 49th out of 50. And for what we can do from that point of view is to raise that up, have that recognition, say we have these needs and they're going unmet. There are both the city, all three, city, county, and at the state level. That's a way administratively we can help. Personally, we can get engaged too, on the offside without wearing the badge about the fact that, this is a need. And it's not just from a highway safety point of view, it's responding to calls. It's responding quite often as a first responder prior to Victor and his team getting there. Law enforcement plays many, many important roles other than just being a roadside. And they also provide a great effect related to our work zones and maintenance zones by being in the area for our personnel and then the general contracting community and local businesses that will have some people that are right there shoulder to shoulder with a vehicle going 45, 50, 65 miles an hour. Their presence alerts folks, brings that speed down. And so we'll continue to request of their help, but our role is to really explain how there is a gap in what we're trying to achieve. And as much as we can say there are areas that we've made improvements in safety, I know we could do much more if we were even just average across the country related to our law enforcement staffing. And I'm not sure, Director Garrett, I don't know if you, anything you would add.
I could not have said it more eloquently. We have a partner in OSP and in law enforcement. Visible presence is the #1 approach in terms of making the roadways safer for all, the traveling public and those men and women who are working to maintain or build or transport commerce and freight through those work zones. So we need to be partners there, and as the trooper per capita position of the state of Oregon, I think that's embarrassing, and we should do everything we can to support our brothers and sisters.
So is there any, and this is maybe an off conversation we can have offline, but in terms of the visible deterrent, that's really in terms of decoys and where you maybe don't have someone staffed in the vehicle, but there's certainly, you still see the vehicle and your foot automatically comes off the gas pedal a little bit. It's like when Mom slowed the car down when I was a kid. It was kind of like, oh. So I wonder, are there other creative ways that states are doing some of that work to try to at least, or would it even matter?
Yeah, Madam Chair, and that is an option for law enforcement, as is in some cases photo enforcement, where an officer reviews before a citation is ever issued. So it's not just coming from a machine to the operator. There are other ways of deployment. One of the things that law enforcement, though, will share with you is that it gets around pretty quick, that actually there's nobody in the vehicle. Nobody's there, but also they're worried about if there is an incident and now someone in the public comes up expecting help, there's nobody in the vehicle. And there's other ramifications related to those types of things that they paint the broader picture of their role in public safety. Yes, it's a deterrent, but then what's the trade-off related to the risks that happen because you don't have personnel there? And the same thing with the photo enforcement. It's great for that particular charge, but it's very limited to red light running or to speeding. You don't then have the conversation with the individual to find out if they may have a warrant out, or there's an abduction point of view, or they're transporting illegal substances. You don't have that conversation beyond the traffic ticket if it's a photo. So law enforcement is quite often the most important conversation is at roadside. That's why sometimes there's no ticket, because they see that it's an education moment as well, and they could take advantage of that. So all of those are what we entrust in our law enforcement partners, who are professionals, who are trained, and that's within their area of choice. We may come up with ideas and suggestions, but just as they trust us to do the work we do as professionals, we in turn trust them.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay, I would welcome a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to request approval of the 2019 Oregon Transportation Safety Performance Plan and National Priority Safety Program Section 405 application. Authorize the Transportation Safety Division Administrator to sign necessary agreements to carry out projects in the safety program, and an amendment to the Region 4 language.
Excellent, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. And now we have an informational item on to the quarterly safety, pedestrian, and highway safety plan. So, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This on your agenda every quarter for Commissioner Callery. There's a set of performance measures that you get a chance to have an update on, and safety is one of those that is there every quarter. And so, taking a chance with you this month to talk about one of those safety performance areas, in this case, pedestrian safety. And as mentioned earlier, we have the guiding document, the long-range safety plan, and in here, pedestrian safety is one of those areas called out. Our highway safety program is multimodal. Pedestrians, cyclists, scooters, skaters, rollers, riders, operators, motorcycle drivers, and passengers are all part of this plan. And in particular, related to pedestrians, the group that helped and led by Chair Hoffer to create this document on your behalf talked about the fact that one of those things from the pedestrian side is that there are a lot of times people just don't know what the rules are, whether they are a pedestrian or they're a motor vehicle operator. And so this particular area in our plan that was approved last year and upcoming in the plan that you just adopted and approved a moment ago for 19, pedestrian safety is one of those primary chapters. The reason, the numbers are not going the way we would hope. If you look back a few years ago when the policy plan, the data used to create that document, fatalities and serious injuries for pedestrians across the state numbered 172. The last set of crash data for a full year that we can access is 2016, and that number has risen to 225. So the Oregon Transport Safety Committee has said the aggressive goal is to go back to where we were. And if we can bring that back down, we will have made a significant double-digit percentage difference across the state to bring it back to that 2013 and 15 average. Part of the application, Commissioner Calorie, that you mentioned, application for that 405, one of those areas is pedestrian safety, and this is new. That's why you see in the Safety Division budget a slight increase. This is one of those areas that states that have a fatality count that exceeds 15% of the total related to bicycles pedestrians gets an award. There's about 18 states. We are one of those. It's not an award we want. But the fact that we're there and they're giving us funding, you can see on the slide that we were just almost 17% of our fatalities are from vulnerable road users, pedestrians or bicyclists. I mean, one would think, well, those are pretty much all urban-based, right? They're not. And unfortunately, you see and hear stories that it's in areas that outside of the 3 or 4 main metropolitan areas of the state. The pedestrian fatals occur all across the state. What we have done...
Real quick. Troy, I'm curious whether or not well, of that percentage, what of that percentage are some of our facilities that are in the urban communities?
Thank you, Commissioner Simpson. I'm going to grab real quick and double check related to urban versus urban, the pedestrian side. But I'll share with you, it has been about 50-50 if you, over time, if you say it's the strict urban boundary of the city versus the suburban area, it's been around 50-50 over time. Some years, because the numbers are small, some years it may slide one way or the other, just by a little bit.
Is there any breakdown or any benefit for a breakdown from urban, suburban, and rural? Or is it pretty much defined the way you have your benchmarks?
Yeah, Commissioner Calorie, a lot of it is going to be based on the local community if they are willing to participate in a pedestrian program. And there's a slide coming up I'll share with you. What we look at is say we offer everybody, all counties and all cities, to participate in this particular program. And it's up to the local community if they say, yes, we want to be involved from an education outreach point of view, or if they would like to be involved from a law enforcement and a training point of view. And we will work with them because we know while you see some of the dots on the map, pedestrian safety happens every day. Everybody on their way here. At one point in time on your trip here to this meeting, you were a pedestrian, whether that was going out to your car or your car to here. So we try and look at those different areas. Now, there may be some parts of the state, because they have seen a higher count, we may put a little bit more of a pressure to say, you really do want to get involved in this program because your numbers are above the statewide average for a particular area of the state. But we don't try and step away from anybody asking to be part of the program, because pedestrians are corner to corner of the state.
Thank you.
You bet. So the funding that we received in the pedestrian side, $195,000, and we split that between the outreach and education of $95,000 and $100,000 towards law enforcement to be able to be on the ground in those communities conducting pedestrian safety enforcement campaigns and training. Now, when law enforcement's doing a pedestrian safety enforcement campaign, they're not just looking to cite drivers. They will cite bicyclists, they will cite pedestrians that are not following the law, as well as motor vehicle operators in and around if they're following what's expected for pedestrian safety. As I mentioned, related to fatalities, 2013 to 2015, this map is showing you where in the state the fatalities have occurred. And there isn't a particular spot. It is a rather interesting situation to see how widespread and all over the state pedestrian fatalities do occur. And you can see that in 2015 was the highest count of those three, with the numbers going the wrong way for what we're trying to achieve. This is then when we've made that offer, Commissioner Calerio, out to the communities to say, if you would like to be involved in our program, here are the communities that have raised their hand over the last 3 years to participate. Now, what we'd like to see is if we put the participating map over the top of the fatality map, are communities that are having problems participating or not? And so this is the combination where the blue, the lighter color, is showing you where the fatalities are, and the darker squares are showing you where the communities are participating. What we now then do, Commissioner Calerio, is then when we start to see a mishit, that's when our region traffic safety coordinators will reach out to those communities and show them this type of information. You have an opportunity to participate, and actually we will reimburse you for doing the effort. It's amazing how much of the conversation, they may go out over a particular afternoon and set up and do a pedestrian operation and watch at a signal or an unsignalized crossing, how much that has residual effect over time. People remember it, and that's the purpose. But then also working with particularly local schools as part of the Safe Routes to School program about what's their responsibility as children are walking school buses or with their parents, or the parents that are taking the children back and forth to school, what's their responsibility too? Because that's one of the high time moments when you've got a lot of pedestrians in a particular concentrated area. And so we would like to help the car drivers understand what their responsibility is from there. Part of the outreach campaign is we've gotten a real good coverage and recognition of using Bigfoot, Sasquatch as part of the Oregon crossing that every Oregonian has right to cross. And so we've done things that are print, we have done movie theater, we have done online media, and we've also done yard signs. And so this is an example of taking that particular message and dealing with yard signs. So I brought a handful for our guests and our hosts here in Lakeview and Lake County to leave with them that they can put out as a reminder, because as we go down Main Street here, you've got crossings that are there about the fact that every one of us have the ability to cross, whether there's a signal intersection there or not. But so we brought a few for you, and so hand that off to you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. And then also we did online and TV. So it's just a second. I'll ask Jackie to push the button on the ad with the dog there. We entered this particular advertisement in the World Fest Houston, which is an international campaign for public service announcements. And this last year, this particular one won a Gold Remy Award, which is in the upper couple percentile points for dealing a public service announcement, in part because it's different. It takes a different approach to what's going on, and hopefully the humor in it makes sense as well. So we'll see how it goes. Should jump over to YouTube and bring up a 30-second ad. And if it doesn't, we'll skip over. So you might just, if you want to grab it and start back at the front.
To help keep your watch safe. Wait for the signal. Taking the sights and smells till you get the go-ahead to cross. Use intersections to cross, but when you can't, remember your training. Always look left, right, left. Show you want to cross and wait for all lanes of traffic to stop. And make eye contact so you know the driver sees you. Hi there.
That's great. So now we'll escape out of that and close off. There we go. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you. Yeah, so it's great, creative. We've done more and more work with Mr. Fuller's office, communication, to talk about these campaigns, how they go out, and then in turn, how can we use our professional staff within the organization to extend the message and use maybe different platforms and opportunities as well. So we appreciate working with Tom's folks and looking forward to more and more of that as we move forward into the program area. So Madam Chair, just to give you a quick update where we are. Unfortunately, in this case, the performance report is not good, as the numbers are going the wrong way. However, the OTSC has recognized this as one of their primary areas. In fact, on Wednesday, they had it in through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
So we talk about trends and try to mine down into what are we seeing. Is that part of the discussion that you have in your committee as well? If you wouldn't mind just helping us with, okay, so we see the data and we know that it's not in the right way. How far do we go down to try and see what we can do about it?
Well, Chair Benny, we have one of our members attends PBOT and Metro's meetings up in Portland as a citizen volunteer, and he will bring back information to us. I deal with it on the street on a daily basis, and I have my anecdotal type information. And then we have now a person who is a transit person from Medford, and Julie Brown, she's great, and she brings a different perspective. And I think we're working on this in a way that we bring different perspectives, minds on the street. And Lewis is up in Portland, he's an engineer. And Julie Brown down in Medford, we bring these all together, and then we can form some ideas, and we're forming ideas more often than not. We are not very organized. We debate and we organize that. We don't just get through a meeting. We stop, we debate, and we discuss best practices on a regular basis.
Okay, so now we will have a discussion. This was a part of the continuous improvement and part of the management review. So this is around our facilities program and the review that was conducted. Hi. And I believe you have a few folks we're going to dial in.
The consultant plan B.
Excellent.
Hello?
Hello? Oh, hello, this is Randy.
Randy, how are you,
Hi,
sir?
Randy.
Oh,
Good morning, all.
excellent. So this is Matthew Garrett. I'm the director of ODOT. We have plugged you into the commission meeting down in Lakeview. We're going to turn this over. the chair will turn this over to Mr. Gebhardt to kick this off, but you good folks from Plan B are live right now. So.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
All right,
Mr.
well,
Gebhardt, go right ahead.
Good morning, Chair Boehne, Commissioners, Director Garrett. For the record, Bob Gebhardt, Chief Administrative Officer for the agency. Here this morning, of course, as Director just announced, with the folks from Plan B Consultancy. They came in as part of the McKinsey Management Review and DAS recommendations. This is one of the deliverables called for. They wanted a facilities efficiency review done, and so since late last year and up until very recently, Plan B has been in our midst, learning a little bit about our facilities management. They toured the whole state and have presented a review that you have had a copy of. I'm not so sure you've probably had a chance to review it in depth, but we're going to give you a quick flyover, and we'll let the Plan B folks do that. Have a few comments and some next steps, and then we'll take any questions from you. So with that, Brad and Christine, I'll let you introduce yourselves and take it from here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us today and allowing us to speak with you over the lunch hour, and I'm sure as you're getting ready to wrap up, so we appreciate your time. I couldn't hear Bob that well, but I'm Christine Schlicker with Plan B as the project manager for the project, and
I'm Brad Rayfish, a partner with Plan B.
So do you have our slides in front of you?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So I'm going to just start on the Plan B company overview slide. I'm just going to give you a 2-second overview. We are headquartered in Portland, Oregon, and we are a small consulting firm that provides support to government agencies. Our specific focus of consultancy typically lies in asset management, organizational structure, resource allocations, and of course, efficiency reviews. So the next slide goes a bit into, it's titled Methodology of Our Approach. So we don't believe that our approach for this project is ever really simply to perform a review or to come in and give a recommendation. We believe in a very important phase called contextual understanding. So we believe the kind of heart of and purpose of the way that we approach these projects is to do a deep dive into each agency and organization that we have the pleasure of working with. For ODOT, that meant driving a bit and making sure that we could interview. We sent out surveys. We tried to see as many facilities as possible. You can see maybe on the little Oregon map, it shows we traveled 3,300 miles. We visited 38 ODOT facilities. We interviewed 86 personnel and took quite a few notes. So that's the contextual understanding phase. That really helps us to take a comprehensive and integrated look at the strategic, technical, and cultural drivers that affect some of these projects and eventually impact the success of implementation moving forward. So out of the contextual understanding phase, there are very specific themes that typically jump out. These are documented. We reviewed these with Bob and Randy and the teams on a regular basis. We also presented at the all-staff meeting. And as these themes come out, then what we can do is we can say, okay, this is the what is for the organization, but then obviously we need to look at the what should be. And so the difference in there, that gap, is best practices and benchmarking. So we reviewed other DOTs, including Caltrans, Utah, Colorado, obviously WashDOT, and then best practices before we ever got to a place where we could say, okay, now we know the line in the sand of how things are currently. We know the themes that have been driven throughout that came through prominently. We also know that there's a gap between what's considered best practices and what's happening now. So that's where our report comes into play. It's to really be developed as a roadmap for the next steps that facilities should take moving forward. Some of these will be long-term, which we'll get into. Some will be short-term. but essentially it's to give you an idea of what should happen next. And I think I forgot to say at the beginning, maybe Bob already did, please feel free to interrupt me at any point. I'm happy to answer questions. So if we get to the next slide, which is slide 4, it says at the top, what is going well? Some of those themes that came through loud and clear is that even within funding constraints, the facility services branch really attempts to address and deal with any need that comes to the table in the best of their ability. We also heard over and over again the positive impact that leadership has had in the last 24 months. Really now it's been beyond the 2 years. Enhanced service delivery. When we spoke with customers that were in, outside of regions 1 and 2, and actually across the state, they really focused on how in the last 2 years they had felt a presence from facilities. They had, in the past had heard maybe a lot of no in response to questions, and they felt like now they were receiving more of a generated discussion of how can we help get you to that next step. Facilities wanting to play a role, wanting a seat at the table. Those were all very positive themes that came out of those discussions and interviews in our conceptual understanding phase. The next slide addresses challenges. As I mentioned, you'll have some that, some of the challenges that we've heard had to do obviously with funding. There's been an underfunding of deferred maintenance, and obviously there's a large portfolio of facilities that are statewide. Also, we have just the size and geography of the state of Oregon makes things a little bit difficult. While there's consistent delivery of services within regions 1 and 2, regions 3, 4, and 5 were not feeling a facility's presence on a regular basis. And so there was kind of this division that we kept hearing about within the state. And then strategic planning. Facilities as a branch, really is trying to understand who they're going to be as a branch. And are they going to be the subject matter experts that really facilitate a lot of these discussions and handle the project management and the high-level overview? Or are they going to be the wrench holders that are truly at each facility, answering every work order, delivering every single service that's needed by everyone internally and externally? The next slide states the beginning of our recommendations, which is strategic planning. So there are truly 4 basic levels of needs that came out of our recommendations. First 2 were longer term, which are the strategic plan and funding. The next 2 can be focused on immediately, and this will help to narrow the gap within the facility services branch. So with strategic planning, this will help facilities understand truly where they should be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, in alignment with ODOT's mission and vision and goals. It helps them understand almost their seat at the table or the role that they'll play moving forward. The next slide is funding. Best practices state that 2 to 4% of aggregate current replacement value of facilities is considered the minimum level of funding to invest in facilities. We found that currently ODOT is investing closer to 1.9%. Obviously, a long-term strategy needs to be developed that will accommodate both the backlog and the need for future maintenance. Next slide is services. So now we get into the 2 shorter-term items that can be addressed in the near future. So this is really looking at what are the services that facilities can provide, and what model should they be provided in? So you have, is this something that facilities should do internally? Is this something that should be procured externally? Or is it something that's in the middle of that Venn diagram where it says internal with assistance, which is what we kept calling our, our combo approach, or we had a more hybrid approach, where, you know, maybe facilities would come in as the lead, and then they would be, they would direct the level of service, they would direct the type of work, they would direct the customer service aspect to ensure that the work was completed to a certain level and standard, but maybe not actually be at each region's doorstep on a daily basis. When we get to the last slide, which speaks to structure, this obviously ties in very closely with services, because the question becomes, how do facilities structure themselves so that they can provide consistent services across the state? So there can't be this division of, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This needs to be, number one, a high level of service that's offered, but then number two, a level of service that's offered consistently. So we know that the structure currently is realistic, but it's not perfect, you know. So, but given today's financial constraints, facilities, as we mentioned in the positive findings, has really done their best to meet the needs internally and externally. There will need to be a restructuring, though, that's set in place. And so the next step is for facilities to determine what resources are necessary to meet that need. We know that obviously this will mean a jump in funding. It might mean being, you know, very, you know, kind of focused with current positions once it's in alignment with where you're going to be in 5-10 years, knowing how to utilize internal resources, but then any additional positions that would need to be considered to be able to make that consistent structure and services available across the state. What you'll see on the right-hand side of this slide is a recommended, you know, one recommendation of structure, which would show that currently there's a maintenance presence in regions 1 and 2. Our recommendation is that there would be, you know, a form of maintenance presence that would be a facility personnel in all of the regions. That might mean, you know, a program analyst, also to include motor carrier, and then an operations manager to include DMV. All of these positions would need to obviously speak to each other, but there will need to be additional positions so that that true level of service can be met. Any questions, or how does this, what kind of thoughts are jumping out at folks there?
Should we, Bob, do you want to go next and offer some comments, or should we dive in with questions, or what would you prefer?
If it's okay, I'll just make a few brief comments.
Please,
and then
okay.
that tees it up for taking some Q&A.
Excellent.
So first off, I'd just like to thank Brad and Christine and the team. They've done a yeoman's effort traveling across the state. We've got a big facilities plan. There's a lot going on in a consultative role. We do have an absolute call to action here with some. Let's get clarity. Let's get strategic. This is one of the DAS recommendations bodies of work to perform, and it comes in sync with the strategic business plan, which has a strategic investment construct to it. It also has a governance piece to it. So as those two efforts begin mature and move more fully into the environment, this is one of those strategic investment arenas where we get an opportunity to think about deferred maintenance, the aging facilities plant, and some of those longer term, longer range investments that need to be made. As pertains to the service array, I believe there's a couple of structural conversations you can have. One might be pertaining to the organizational structure, but really what I'm going to be more in pursuit of is a functional discipline. What's required here to perform the functions, and we'll have a complete conversation with the divisions, those that run their divisions very well, and they're responsible for the facilities plant and the operations that go therefrom. But we'll have a complete conversation as to who best performs the functions, but more importantly, so as we have those conversations, we could very well lead to a shuffling and an organizational structural adjustment, but it'll only be after we understand the function fully and make an intentional play into that arena and be very intentional in our implementation. So again, good recommendations, lots here. I think our intention is really to move it into, we're going to present to this Continuous Improvement Advisory Committee in July. And so they'll hear a presentation that includes our work plan and how we intend to carry out the work. And as I said, I think we're also going to move the report and the work plan into the Strategic Investment Group, as well as a governance group at some point to talk about the work plan, the resources required, and the cadence and timing to get those things done. But let me stop there and receive any questions you've got.
So one question that jumps out is, so I think of it as two separate lines of business. Really, we have the business operations and planning and even DMV, things that are more less maybe highway division, thinking of maintenance facilities and storage of materials and that sort of thing. So some of this, when we go into community, especially outside some of the more populated areas, there's a clear partnership that goes on of sharing facilities or being able to, thinking from a city or a county perspective, we have ODOT in the city, in the county, how does this play into some of the efficiencies as other jurisdictions are also planning for their facilities? How can we be doing some of that together? First of all, it's the impact in the footprint of those facilities in community can be taking up valuable real estate, but also the shared costs and some of those other pieces that would be efficiencies captured. Is that part of this as well?
Chair Boehne, I think that's right in the wheelhouse.
Okay.
Again, from a strategic standpoint, we really got to have a complete conversation about leveraging resources. Really collaborative work in a given region makes great sense in a state with this kind of geographic footprint and a facilities plant that has this many things going on. To the extent we can leverage facilities and leverage our investments in them and get service providers that share that responsibility, I think we're all better for it. And that will be, again, it's a longer range plan, but we've got to be thinking about what's there now to leverage that can actually prove out or help us beta some of the concepts and develop more robust models in the future.
I'm curious whether or not if the final if the recommendations that are present here are these recommendations in terms of a plan going to come soon, or is that going to be later? Or how long do you think that would take to develop?
We're in the middle of it. We're in the midst of it and doing a lot of these things now. And like I said, we're going to come to this Continuous Improvement Advisory Committee with some early thoughts and seek input, and then work within the strategic business plan and the strategic investment arena on further vetting of those plans to try to get that developed as soon as we can and get more heavily into the implementation pieces.
But is there an anticipated timeline of when at least you hope, or even your team plans to have it complete?
Yeah, I'd like to have it done by the end of the year.
Okay, got it.
Have it in motion.
Questions? Director Garrett, anything?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, to the team at Plan B, thank you so much for your work and for the presentation today, and we look forward to our next steps together.
Well, thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you. Take care.
Okay, next we have the request to amend the 1821 STIP, and this is to comply with Senate Bill 270. And Mr. Mather, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Paul Mather, Highway Division Administrator. I appreciate the community fanfare as I step up here at noon. I'm here to request amendment to the 1821 statewide transportation improvement program to comply with Senate Bill 270 by transferring funds from Oregon 569 Beltline at Delta Highway Interchange Project and create utility reallocations and construction phases for that project. So backing up to the Jobs and Transportation Act of '09, as you remember, in that act there were specific projects that were named in statute, which gave us work to do as things changed and we had savings or needed additional money. We not only needed to come before you for approval, but we actually had to go back and change statute. to be able to successfully deliver all those projects. The project in Eugene at I-5 and Beltline had significant savings on that project. And in 2015, the legislature took action through Senate Bill 270 to allocate funds at that time to the Beltline project at Delta, but then also to designate any further savings to be moved to that project. And so here we are today. Now that that project on I-5 and Beltline is completed, we've identified the savings on that project as $20 million, and we are here to ask your approval to move the savings on that project, $20 million, to the Delta Beltline project and to comply with Senate Bill 270.
Do we have specific questions? Please.
I had a quick one, Paul. When you guys, was there given I think we were in our last meeting, we were talking about just the challenges dealing with the cost of construction nowadays and workforce shortages and whatnot, and that whole challenge that everybody's facing in the industry. But when you guys were scoping this back then, was it significantly less, or were you pretty close within what you have now proposed at the 23.6 cost for construction?
In my opinion, it's a little bit of both. So remember, we were coming, in 2009, we were coming out of an economy similar today that was humming along, and these estimates were based in a similar time we are today, where we were trying to get ahead of where costs were going. Then in 2009, the recession hit, and things were going the opposite direction rapidly. And so as we got into construction on many of these JTA projects, we found ourselves with savings because of the very competitive bids that we've got on those projects, and we were able to reallocate those savings. Also on this project, in the last phase, we actually did some value engineering and re-looked at our design as we were completing it, and we saw that there was actually a bigger need in the community at Beltline Delta, and some of the auxiliary lanes and some of the features that we originally envisioned with this project, we actually deleted from the last phase. So we consciously had savings in that way to meet a bigger, larger community need at Delta Beltline.
Thanks. If there's not any other, Madam Chair, I will move to approve the amendment of the 2018-2021 STIP to comply with Senate Bill 270 by transferring funding from Oregon 569 Beltway at Delta Highway Interchange Project and create utility relocation and construction phases.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have another STIP amendment, and this one is Oregon 140.
And Madam Chair, we've had conversations with our
Yes,
jurisdictional partners, and it seems to me there are a couple issues that probably need just a little more work. And I would request the commission defer this until we have sat down with our partners and addressed all the outstanding issues that exist right now. And once we do that, we would bring it back to the commission for a request.
Okay. All right. So next item, we have a request again for a STIP amendment, and this one is to increase funding for US 97 Center River Interchange, Oregon 31 project. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commission. Gary Farnsworth, Region 4 Manager. Also, let Jared introduce himself again.
Chair Bainey, member of the Commission. Jared Johnson, South Central Oregon Area Manager.
And as Chair Bainey stated, we're here to request an approval of an amendment to the STIP 2018-21 STIP to increase the project US 97 Sun River interchange to OR 31 by $1.8 million. This is an opportunity, leveraging opportunity, timing opportunity, and benefiting similar to what Paul Mather was describing in terms of savings we had from one project in Klamath County to adding work in Klamath County as well on a route that is important to the state. Not a huge volume, but still very important in a couple of different ways as described in the letter. And a good use of combining our low-volume funds with those savings. And also, we got a good price for the work on 97, and we're able to transfer that into the added mileage we can do on 31. We've also had an ongoing, pretty important, robust strategy for 31 over time. And some of the dollars that are required to keep that up to par are pretty high and strong. So we have been looking over the years on that corridor to continue to make improvements. Also, coming out of this last winter, we realized on that northern 11 miles that we have a need to get it repaired as a priority. Without further ado, we'll look for questions, and hopefully we can move it forward.
Any questions? Seems pretty straightforward. Please.
Yeah, Madam Chair, with that, I will move to approve them in the 1821 STIP to increase funding for US 97 Sun River Interchange, Oregon 31 project by $1.8 million for the additional work required and needed.
Okay, great. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you
very much. So folks, that appears that we have come to the end of our agenda, and I would like to again thank Lake County and Lakeview, the city of Lakeview, and our partners in Klamath as well, for welcoming us to this part of the state. Hearing all the great work that's happening, I just couldn't be more pleased to there's a hum here that's really exciting. And so thank you for all the great work. We're thrilled to be here, and we are adjourned.